What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Did y'all see that? What?
Let's just throw Scream 6 in there for like
It
my
was good.
favorite movie. It was really good. The best of the franchise, in my opinion, since the first one.
Yeah.
Feaven Abera, welcome inside the crazy ant farm. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We are living the dream as always, and we are super pumped to have you on the show. Let me just start off by saying, and we'll dive into this way, but your episode of Doc was like awesome, just insane. It was like I can't even imagine. It was so good. So I can't wait to talk to you about that. But we are pumped. All the work that you've been doing and how you kind of got started in the career and everything. We are pumped to talk to you. And that's kind of how we kind of start everything off for everybody who might not be familiar with you or how you got started. What was it? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or did you kind of fall into it? How'd you get in?
Yeah, it was one of those things where like it's been like I've wanted to do it for so long that I actually don't remember when the point was, you know?
Yeah.
I like to say like I've been an actor for like 20 plus years, but only been in the industry for 10 because it's just been something that I've always wanted to do.
Yes.
But just for like accessibility reasons, you know, like I grew up in East End of Hamilton. My mom was first generation immigrant, so the accessibility to go into this work was necessarily, you know, available to me. So
Yeah.
it really started when I got my first job at 17, working at a cafe restaurant on the waterfront. And that kind of helped me pay for classes, like taking film acting classes, taking trains and buses to Toronto. It's like a 55-minute train ride. At the time, actually, it was more of like an hour 30 because it was before we had the train. But
Yeah.
it was like an hour 30 bus ride to Toronto to do like student short films and take acting classes. My dad was kind enough to drive me sometimes.
Nice.
There was actually one time where I was doing a student short film and we went into overtime that I missed the last bus
Uh-oh.
to Hamilton. And I was stranded in Toronto, 17, 18. And my dad had to drive all the way to Toronto to pick me up and drive me home at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And I still feel really bad about it, but you know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of just how I got started. And eventually I did the big move to Toronto. I used the excuse of university.
Yeah.
And to like get a place, get access to grants, go to school. I genuinely do love school, so it was nice to actually go to university and get a degree. But the real excuse was to be in Toronto so that I could really delve into this career and get an agent and all that jazz. So yeah.
I love that though. I mean, you know, ulterior motives are sometimes not a bad thing. That's for sure.
You know, it's like it's one of those things where like if you can kill two birds with one stone, you know,
Absolutely.
why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, I'm a huge superhero fan, obviously, the new Captain America poster behind me, but my wife is also a superhero fan. So when it came out on Valentine's Day, hey, that's what we're doing for Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
you know, able to round it all together.
Yeah.
But I love you telling your story about, you know, just the process of the dedication, you know, that it took to get back and forth between the acting classes and your support system, you know, mentioning that your dad would come and pick you up and take you sometimes. I think that's very important because in this industry, you know, there is a lot of things that will take you off the beaten path that you want your career trajectory to be, right? And so as long as you have your support system, I feel like that is very important. So what was that like when you first told your parents that you wanted to pursue this as a career? Were they like, okay, hold on, let's think about this a little bit, or were they like all in supporting?
I kind of wish it was that gentle.
Right.
It was just full out no, you know.
Oh man.
At the very beginning, it was just And I get it, like now
Of
reflecting back
course.
on it, I do get it because there's this fear and, you know, my parents are also young on the younger side too,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
like they're kind of they're sticking to what they know works and they're sticking to what they know will provide like a better life
Hmm.
Right.
for me, and that to them is like education, you know becoming a doctor or a nurse or getting into like medical school or law school or any of the like engineer. um and it's just like what they know um, works,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
then wanting to go into film and TV, like wanting to be an actor, obviously is not that. And there's all of these unknowns. And there's this like mirage of film and TV being the place where like it's not guaranteed, you
Right.
know?
Hmm.
Right.
But nowadays, nothing is guaranteed, like job wise,
No, that's
Exactly.
yeah.
uh, you might go to medical school for how many years and you might not really find a job, like
That's right.
Hmm.
especially in especially in Ontario where that's like you're getting an influx of doctors and like not really knowing where to put them, and
Mm.
influx of nurses not really knowing where to put them. So um yeah, it was a lot of trying to prove to them that I could do this, and that was a lot of like and that too was the motive of getting a job, at 17 and going into this work, and they saw that I was actually making that effort to follow this dream myself and supporting myself mostly financially,
Right.
with paying for classes and doing all these things. So they're like, okay, well, at least we'll meet you where you're at and we'll drive you to acting class in Toronto, or we'll pick you up, or we'll, support that way. Um, and eventually they got warmed up to it once I started making money.
There we go.
That always helps. That always helps.
Yeah, it always helps where, you buy your mom a nice thing or you buy your dad a nice thing or you come home with Christmas presents and they're like, "Where'd you get the money for this?" And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, a couple of things there, right? It's the job of mom and dad to worry, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's they always want you to kind of be okay and do better than they
Hmm.
did, and if they can pass
Hmm.
along the mistakes they made and help you not do them,
Hmm.
right? As a dad,
Hmm.
I know that's what my but I think sometimes mom and dad have to remember too that in order to succeed, you have to fail. And
Yeah.
if you don't let your child fail every now and then,
Hmm.
they don't know how to succeed, right? And I think
Yeah.
you did a wonderful thing by showing them, hey, I'm not going to ask you guys to, while I just audition all day long for you to support me, I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to put in the
Yeah.
effort because I'm serious about this and I'm going to
Yeah.
prove to you. And I think that went a really long way to get that acceptance from them.
Hmm.
So great for you. I think the way you handled the situation,
Yeah.
because it can be difficult. A lot of times when the family says, no way, we're not a part of this, that can be
Hmm.
detrimental in someone chasing the dream, right? And
Yeah.
the way that you handled it, I think you did really well. The other thing about it is because you mentioned that yeah, the mom was an immigrant, right, and coming into it,
Hmm.
and so they have a
Hmm.
very set way of how things are. I'm assuming, and this is what they think, kind of a thing. Like you had mentioned, they want you a lawyer, doctor, engineer,
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
right? When you first enter into the industry, because now
Hmm.
we've just got it's a whole different game now as opposed to the way it was. Right now it's all about, it has to be inclusive, it has to be diverse, and we'll put people in roles that maybe don't make sense for roles just to meet that quota of having
Hmm.
that person, kind of a thing. Has that been
Hmm.
challenging for you getting into it, and how do you approach it as an actor? Do you audition for roles that aren't necessarily what the role called for, or do you stick to, they're looking for this, so these are the ones I'm going to audition for? What's your
Yeah.
approach on it? Because I think it's important for young actors trying to come up with that right now.
I think it's, I think honestly, it's the one thing I like to say that it really is important to learn and know how your industry works in particular.
Hmm.
Because for me, because now on breakdowns, you say open ethnicity. And a lot of the things that I was auditioning for was a lot of open ethnicity stuff, right? And there's a lot of American productions that film up here, right? And when you're kind of looking at the industry as an actor, there's it almost splits where you have the Canadian industry and then the American industry
Mm,
in Canada because they both kind of live parallel and sometimes they cross over, but a lot of the time, not really. And the actor that's living in the place of Ontario or living in Ontario or living in Canada um, has to kind of juggle two film careers a little bit, where it's like,
yeah.
are you going to be the actor that a lot of the time is auditioning for American stuff, or are you going to
Mm,
be the actor that a lot of the time is going to do really well in the Canadian industry?
mhm,
Um, or are you going to kind of teeter on both? And when you're going into the American industry per se, there is a lot of that like diversity roles and like trying to hit those quotas. Um, but a lot of the time it's more about getting the percentage of Canadians on the American set
Mm,
rather
mm,
than the diversity
yeah.
itself, especially, in the beginning of my career where it was a lot of like your entire crew has to be Canadian if you're going to be filming up here. Your like, let's say 30% of your cast has to be Canadian
Right.
actors. Um, and so a lot of the time, what would happen is that you would have American production companies that were casting their leads and their supporting out of America or out of LA. A lot of them would be like, hey, the leads and supporting will be American, and then whatever day player roles or principal roles we can fill in.
I'm assuming
Yes, sir.
it's because it's the same as it is here, where they get some sort of a tax incentive. The
Yeah,
American come if they hire a certain percentage of
yeah,
crew and cast, right? They get money back
yeah,
for it, right?
yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
exactly. It's a tax incentive. But then what that kind of happens is like, then in that space, you're going to be auditioning for a lot of day player roles, and so your
Right.
career is just going to be a lot of day player auditions. Um, and so sometimes it kind of feels a little bit stagnant where because they're casting out of the states, you need an LA agent or someone who can kind of get
mm,
you on that
mhm,
side so that you can audition for supporting and lead roles
Hmm.
mhm.
for those shows. At least this has been in my early experience, right? Um, and so that's kind of where that has really been. So it hasn't necessarily been like me as a black woman, as an East African woman trying to um, get into the industry through diverse casting, but rather me as a Canadian trying to get access to American roles and working on American sets. And then on the Canadian side, there is a bit more of that like wanting to support more diverse filmmakers and independent filmmakers because a lot of we don't really do private investing here. It's a lot
Mhm.
of government funding.
Hmm.
So like telefilm, CBC, like all those spaces. And so with that, you have a lot of independent and first time directors coming up wanting to make their own stories. So you have like a lot of diasporic, really amazing first features that we make here, um, and television series. And you see that kind of growing a little bit,
Right.
you know? And then where you fit in that space, which a lot of the time is whether or not you fit in the community that film is going to be about,
Hmm.
Mhm.
or if you're in the Canadian scene and those like big Canadian directors and filmmakers who are making all the movies and TV shows that get all the Canadian funding.
That's so interesting too, because yeah, that's why it's a beautiful thing to have conversations. That's why I'm so in love with this podcast and what we've been doing with this show. It's
Mm-hmm.
because like with having this conversation with you, I knew nothing about that. So to be able
Mm-hmm.
to learn from this, we always say the best form of education is through entertainment and conversation. So to
Yeah.
be able to learn from what you're saying, because I mean, obviously we're America based, United States based, and we know,
Mm-hmm.
not a lot about what's going on in Canada. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that is very interesting. And with you being, you're hitting the ground running, you're very early in your career, and we're very
Mm-hmm.
excited for your career, by the way, because we loved
Thank
your
you.
episode of Doc. How do you keep your mindset fresh? Because mental health is a big thing for us. So we know
Mm-hmm.
that the industry is full of, we like to say, selection instead of rejection. So how do you feel like you keep your mind fresh and keep your momentum moving forward to continue auditioning and to continue reaching out to casting directors to try to get roles?
Mm.
I know I like to get deep, man. I really do. I really do.
Um, you know what? That's such an interesting question because it's like there's a lot of conversation about mental health, particularly in my community right now, just
Hmm.
because as a East African, African, the there's a lot of learning that we have to do and a lot of deconstructing that we have to do around mental health, just
Hmm.
in general, right?
Most
Like
definitely.
putting it in your day to day, including it in your day to day. So how that looked for me is I was doing a lot of, you know, present, like staying present,
Mm-hmm.
doing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of presence work, and
Mm-hmm.
whether that was meditation or if I, listening to very meditative music or grounding um, through yoga or, that it was just the first step of just learning how to ground myself,
Hmm.
Right.
not get too hyped up in hypotheticals, career anxiety,
Hmm.
imposter syndrome, all those things. And then when it came to implementing that in my career with, selection, as you say.
Yes.
Um, so like if there was moments where it was kind of getting I was kind of getting away from myself, it would be a
Hmm.
lot of spiraling career anxiety where I'd be like, am I going to hit my career goals like when I want to hit them? Am I going to be able to actually make it in this industry? Am I actually cut
Right.
out for this industry? Like, is it just too big to chew? Am I not cut out to be someone who carves their own path? Like, is there just not enough representation? Like,
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. And what that would end up doing, especially during the time when you're uh, in a place of always kind of auditioning for the same day player like roles, and it feels like you're
Right.
not getting the opportunity to show casting directors your ability to act.
Right. Right.
Um, it would kind of spiral into this thing, and that would eventually end up in very impulsive decision making,
Hmm.
whether that be spending money on an acting class that I don't need, spending money on headshots that I don't need, or spending money on uh, networking events, or trying to go to like the biggest TIFF parties, or
Hmm.
you know to see if I can maybe like jump the gun and meet like it just ended up being in a lot of impulsive decision making
Right.
Right.
um, as a result of not keeping my own anxieties in check.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ended up happening is I tried to ground myself, try to learn how to come up with really um, healthy coping mechanisms
Hmm.
um, that I learned through, right now there's a movement around mental health within that's happening in Toronto within the a lot of uh, community spaces in the city. Um, and so learning those things, learning those coping mechanisms. And then I was like, maybe I just need to take it one at a time
Mm-hmm.
and just focus inward on me and just making sure
Hmm.
that I bring the best performance that I can in my
Yes.
audition,
Yep.
you know? And then what I noticed was there was this relation, like, there was this relationship where casting would send me things and I'd audition, and then they send me another audition for a different role. And then I come in, I'm like, okay, what if instead of thinking of networking or whatever, what if I just focus on my relationship with this casting director, right?
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
But we live in a space where there's only self tapes now. So you're not in
Hmm.
the room anymore. You don't
Right.
even know what this casting director looks like. Still haven't met half the casting directors in this city.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have no idea what they look like, what they sound like, but through performance and through them sending me breakdowns, it would be like this interesting relationship that we would kind of develop
Right.
through that interaction. And then I would try new things and kind of play around a bit, and then realized I was getting a response, and eventually eventually that ended up in booking Doc,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love because one, I love that you bring up that we're in this phase in the industry right now where you're no longer in the room because thanks to
Hmm.
COVID, everything now is this what we're doing right here, right?
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
certainly has changed the industry. But I want to touch a little bit about what you said about with your anxiety and the pressures that come along with this
Yeah.
industry and the kind of things. It's got to be a little bit difficult sometimes. I'm thinking when, for instance, you're at that point in your career now where you are starting to see some success. You are starting to get on some big name shows, right? Doc and
Mm.
Mayor of Kingstown, and so when you start to see that little breakthrough, right? You're like, oh wait a minute, here we go. We're on a big show now. We're starting to
Mhm.
see some movement, some success. That's got to play into the decision making of, okay, I'm losing my mind right now. I really need a break, but I can't. I don't need. I can't step back. How do you overcome that a little bit? Because I feel like mental health is important. And when you said, hey, I needed to know, I just need to take a break for a little bit, focus on this, focus on that, look inward. But when you're
Mhm.
starting to see success, I feel like sometimes people are scared to look inward or take a break
Mhm.
because they feel like, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to miss out on that next big show or on that next. So how do you cope with that a little bit? Because I feel like there's a lot of people in your situation where you're starting to see that next breakthrough emerging into the
Mhm.
next step, and it's a careful way to tread when you're at that position, right?
Yeah. As actors, sometimes you don't want to stop,
Yeah,
you know? Like you you book a role, even, and especially when it's a role that is an upgrade.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like when
Right.
you go from maybe large principal, or when you go from actor to supporting
right.
on a movie, right? Particularly like this was, I did a film, I did a movie 3 years ago, called Doing It. And
Hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
was with Lily Singh, Stephanie Patrice, pretty awesome, really
Oh
cool
yeah,
names. I grew up watching Lily on YouTube, like
for sure.
during
Yeah.
her Superwoman days, you know what I mean? Like, and I thought, okay, this is it. It's happening. Like this is my shot, you know?
Yeah.
And then I and that was right after, coming off of How to Die Alone, where
Mm-hmm.
it was like more of a day player kind of role.
Hmm.
Um, and then upgrading to supporting on like a really cool movie. And after that movie wrapped, I was like, I need to keep going. I need to keep
Mm.
going. I need to audition more and more. Like I need to get that next supporting role, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But then all that does is it kind of hooks you, so that when you do, like, maybe not get that role for another couple months or for another year, it feels like shit, like, oh,
For
Yeah.
sure.
can I swear? Can I
Yeah.
swear?
Mhm.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah, you can. The E is
Yeah.
next to it. You're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're
all
good.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. You're
And
good.
it doesn't feel great, and you kind of get almost back into this spiral of, you know, am I cut out for this?
Right.
Right.
You
Right.
know? So in the next year that happened, when I did uh when I did book Doc, so last year was very busy personally. So we had
Mm-hmm.
Doc, and then after that I filmed a movie called A Tribe Called Love. And then after that I filmed a Netflix show that's coming out later in the year.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um this year. And it was like just back to back to back.
Wow.
And for 6 months straight, just hopping from one set to another. And it felt really good, but then I was noticing little things where it's like, I'm not seeing my mom as much as I like to.
Right.
I'm not seeing my friends as much as I like to. I'm not, participating in my community in the way that I like to. So then I had to really have this conversation where last year, this is what I wanted. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
what's happening in 2024 is exactly what I wanted after I got off doing it in 2023. But now that I'm in it, I realized actually there's always going to be trade-off,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
you know? So then there was more reflection of like, should I actually maybe really consider that work-life balance as I'm going further into my career, as I begin to do this more as a sustainable job,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know? And so after I finished the Netflix show, I had to, you know, I messaged my agent and I was like, I think I'm good for the year.
Mm.
You
Nice.
know, maybe
Nice.
we'll start up in January 2020. I feel like I felt like I've done enough in 2024. Let's maybe just take the rest of we finish in October, and or I finished filming in October, and I was like, I'm just gonna take October, November, December to just rest, hang out, and we're gonna start it all again in 2025.
There you
Mhm.
go.
But it was really cool to feel that sense of like, I think I'm done. I think this is enough. This
Yeah.
is, moderation. I don't want to be those people who like burn themselves out and run themselves into the ground. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh, most definitely. That was a very mature decision for you,
Absolutely.
with being
Yeah.
such a young person and, trying to get your footing in the entertainment industry because
Mhm.
it is a very hectic thing. But I think, it has become more understanding about mental health breaks. You see all of these
Yeah.
stars taking mental health breaks from social media, and
Mhm.
I feel like that probably used to pose a problem when, the star is about to be in this next hit film, and the producers and everything are like, you should post about this film. But now I don't think people are as touchy about that situation
Right.
because they're very hands off, and you want to work with another big actor later down the line so
Mhm.
you can continue that relationship and continue moving forward. But yeah, let's talk about Doc a little bit because
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
we absolutely loved it. And I loved it too because of you know, there's always the narrative of the dad leaving in situations, and what your character and your father's character had was the mom
Mhm.
leaving, the mom deciding to completely exit the situation, and especially in the African American community. So
Mhm.
I feel like this story with this hot new medical drama that is blowing up everywhere is so
Mhm.
relevant in today's time because we were talking about inclusivity earlier, and there's so many different situations that don't get talked about, and I feel like your episode story was one of those situations that never gets talked about the man stepping up and staying there to raise that child, because a lot
Mhm.
of the time, I say sometimes, the man gets the bad rap of leaving and being self-centered and not wanting to be the parent. So
Mhm.
just talk about your whole experience a little bit, and then talk about the storyline that revolved around your character.
Yeah. Um, it was really interesting because this episode I really had to reflect on my own relationship
Yes.
with my dad,
Mm-hmm.
but also my mom,
Yeah.
which is really funny.
Yeah.
My dad is someone who is very much like he doesn't he's very much like he chooses his words wisely.
Hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
someone who really he's very reflective in the way that he talks, but also he's a very like passionate, stubborn man. You can't tell this man anything that goes against, who he is like he has such a strong sense of who he is as a person
Right.
and what he sees as right and wrong. And that was a lot like Eddie G's character who played my dad
Mm-hmm.
on Doc, right? And but at the same time, the way Eddie played, my father was also very reflective of my mother as well, because my mother
Mm.
is very much like she can't let go.
Hmm.
She's very overprotective.
Right.
Like this idea of the kids growing up is something that is very scary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and he played both so nicely in a way that was like easy to fall into. And um so yeah, that was just a lot of that, and just so willing to just try things. And
Nice.
if we wanted to amp up the heat, we could amp up the heat. If we want to take it more chill, we could take it more chill. There was a sense of like tenderness and stuff. And and yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting. Um, and to be honest, it had me kind of reflect a little bit where, you know, the father in this sense, his whole identity has been Chloe,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
the
And
daughter,
raising
yeah.
Chloe and protecting Chloe. And now
Hmm.
that Chloe is on her own and leaves, what is he now?
Right.
Hmm.
Who does he become now
Right.
without Chloe? And I feel that was a very interesting arc that they included in that show where it's like what like the parent outside the child,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
you know? I just imagine like later in the episode, like he, I don't know, like tries out hobbies, decides
Right.
to renovate and reconstruct his home, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
starts building an in-home gym in Chloe's room instead of, you know, like getting more and more comfortable. But like it just perfectly, so you just see this like possibility of a person's journey and what
Mm.
that's gonna look like
I
too. So yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so much there. I love how you dive deep into it. Like, what's his story after? What's his kind of like, because
Yeah.
you do bring up a very good point though, because I feel like that's a thing that a lot of parents have to deal with. Once you have a child, that does very much become your identity. You're now
Yeah.
just dad or mom, and who you were before that doesn't exist. And you have to
Hmm.
try to figure out who you are after that, right? When they do go out on their own, because you're no longer that. You have to figure out how to reacclimate yourself back in. And the
Hmm.
thought that you brought that in, I love
Hmm.
that. It just shows how in depth you are to figure out the character, the background. Who's this guy? How
Hmm.
is he approaching? Why is he being overprotective? Why is he being this way? And it worked because, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that was going to be my question, was with the way you said your parents were with you, did you bring that in? Because he was very overprotective and very kind of a,
Yeah.
so I love that you were able to incorporate that. The chemistry was stellar, and
Hmm.
and I thought the way you guys played off of each other was beautiful.
Hmm.
And so
I
you,
cried.
yeah,
I
yeah,
cried for
yeah,
sure.
it
Really?
was, it
Yeah,
was,
I did.
and even more
Oh,
so to
yeah.
complicate, right? Because it isn't just an overprotective dad that is protecting somebody that's completely healthy. He's an
Mm.
overprotective dad who does have a chance of everything happening to her because of
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
disease or this condition that she has. So the way
Mhm.
you guys were able to play that off, and
Mhm.
it was just a very, very beautiful thing. Um so
Mhm.
well done. Now this show has been picked up and it is rocking and rolling. It's doing huge. But
Mhm.
I'm assuming at that point that you guys shot this thing, or right? It's a brand new show. Nobody knows. We hope it gets picked up. We hope it's gonna go well.
Yeah.
What was the set like? Could you feel pressure from that, or were they just rocking and rolling and rolling with it, thinking we got something special here and we know it and we're just gonna kind of go with it? Or talk about the set
Yeah.
life on there a little bit about what it was like.
Um, so what I've learned is it's a like the crew is a very tight-knit community,
Yeah.
Mm.
especially in Canada, because
Hmm.
it's like you kind of it's kind of in a space where you have people in each department and then you find that those same people will work on the next show all together. So
Right.
there's already this sense of like cohesion, like everyone really knows each other. And um there was a great balance of professionalism and like fun,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word. Like it was, and so it was a lot of like, like we really want to finish on time. We really don't want to go into over, like we don't want to keep people more than they need to. We want to get people home to their families.
Right.
Um, but we also want to have like a really great set experience. So there was like um lots of jokes, lots of laughs.
Love that.
Molly Parker is so cool.
I bet.
And she actually we lived she used to live on my street, like
Oh,
she was
wow.
now,
Wow.
so it was really really interesting. The makeup artist, what I'm like makeup the makeup folks so inclusive. It was
Mm.
like, there's, especially during this moment where they were doing my makeup and we were having a conversation, he was like, well, like, because Chloe goes through like a near death
Right.
experience
Right.
in this space. So we were talking about how that would look. And, there was conversations about like wanting the lips to be a bit blue. And then the makeup, key makeup was like, well, for her skin tone, it would be more ash, right? So we
Mm.
have to, so there was a lot of like research done. Like they really did
Yeah.
their research and they were always asking me like my comfortability,
Nice.
hair, um, I had a black hairstylist on set
Mm-hmm.
and we were having conversations together about what our hair would look like. It's like, okay, well, you wash your hair once a week. If we're in the hospital for 2 days and you didn't get a chance to wear your bonnet or your head wrap or you didn't get a chance to do anything, it'd probably be this level of frizz. And so we would
Right.
frizz up my hair for the day, like the day in hospital that I would be in, kind of thing.
Love
That's awesome.
that. Wow.
So yeah, it was such great attention to detail and always asking if I needed anything or food dietary restrictions are always respected. Like it was a very professional and inclusive set.
Mm.
And working with, like, I learned so much watching Molly work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually one point where it was the scene where I had my argument with
Yep.
my dad,
Yeah.
and the moment where I squeeze the wound on my hand and it starts
Oof.
bleeding, and
Yeah.
Molly kind of goes, stop. Um, one of the takes, she kind of like, there was one take where the scene really hit home.
Mm.
And she kind of goes to me and she's like, I don't say this to everyone, but you're my favorite patient. And I was like,
Right.
Molly.
Love that. Love it.
It was really cool. And when I booked my next project, we were talking and I told Molly that I booked my first feature, which was at the time, which was going to be, or a lead on my first feature.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was wrap, Molly kind of goes to everyone and goes, just announcement, guys, like Feaven booked her first lead on a feature film. And it was
Aw.
like, everyone was given like a big round of applause and a clap. And it was just so
That's
great.
great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So communal, like a very much like a community, like a very much supportive, like we're here, we're professionals, but we're also creative. So we're here to support each other. It's just, yeah, it was great.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so great.
Mhm.
So what we like to do at the very end of our interviews is hit you
Mhm.
with some popcorn questions. These are some fun questions that, feel loosey-goosey, have get the audience to get to know you a little bit better and
Yeah.
to just, get to know your personality a little bit. And I think you
Mhm.
might have already answered this first one. What was the funniest moment or most memorable moment on the doc set?
Probably that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had that. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, I
Yeah.
know exactly that was about to be it.
Yeah, that one, or when picture wrap, when we were all kind of saying our goodbyes, and that very supportive, like, that send off.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay, well, I'm curious, just because of our conversation and how you approach everything and the way you view life and all this. I'm really interested in this one. If you could live inside a television show or a movie, which one would it be and why?
Right now,
Yeah, yeah. Or any show. It could be a past show or a
or
movie. It could be, yeah.
you know what? It would either be Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Oh, okay.
only because I'm watching it right now, and I'm
Nice.
rewatching it right now. It's so good, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to be in this universe.
Hey, it's
Um,
coming back, so we're just saying we're gonna put that out there for you. Like, just
yeah,
manifest that,
Exactly.
right? You
Exactly.
might
Social
be in
media is a
that
I
big
mean,
universe.
tool.
the title of Doc, Once More with Feeling, is also a name of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode.
So
So I
there
don't
you
know,
go.
like
Yeah,
maybe the
Just
planets will be
saying.
just
aligned,
saying.
Um, that, or just because I'm a nostalgia uh, junkie, probably also Smallville.
Mm,
Oh,
nice.
two great choices. Two
I
great
just,
choices. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if they reboot Smallville, honestly, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
be opposed to it
I
either.
Just
Yeah.
mean,
saying.
without doubt.
That's so great. And so this is kind of a more serious one. What
Mm.
would you tell your 10-year-old self?
Uh, what would I tell my 10-year-old self? Um, you were right the whole time.
Mm,
Mm,
love that.
Yeah, you were right the whole time, I think. I was having um I was having a conversation with another friend of mine, but um we, when when you're a kid and you kind of have these, you know, either whether you're outgoing or you're bubbly or you have high energy or whatever,
Yeah.
and your active imagination, and then you know people as you grow older, in the spirit of protection and in the spirit of love, sometimes
Hmm.
tend to tend to tell you, well, maybe maybe bring your energy down a little bit, maybe keep your expectations not too high, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you grow up and then you're sent out into the real world, and then you realize that you're trying to get back to the same level of energy and spirit as like your 10-year-old self.
Yeah.
hmm
And then you realize that's what everyone is really into and really wants nowadays.
Yep. Yep.
So then it's just like, okay, now I have to just get back to that. Looks like she was right the whole time. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Love
so that's probably what I
that.
tell my 10-year-old self. Yeah.
Love that. And that kind of just
Mhm.
wraps it up with this last one. And I have an idea of what we're going to hear you say, but I'm curious.
Mhm.
We always like to say, are you happy with your career where it's at right now so far?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think I think eventually I did get to that. I mean, that wasn't always the case,
hmm
Again, like being an ambitious person, like wanting things to happen immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, but being forced to take the long route
Mm-hmm.
because it is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes, it is.
And, and my dad has this. My dad, he told me this when I was younger, but he said it's harder to walk two steps forward than if you took it one step at a time.
Ooh,
Mm.
And so
I like that.
I'm like, it eventually coming to the fact that I'm right where I need to be. I'm
Mm-hmm.
right where I'm
hmm
supposed to be, and things will happen in their own time as long as I put in the work and I put in the effort and I don't give up, best to say.
Yep.
So, and I still have to live life too. Like I can't be all about career. Like I also have to live this other side
That's
of
right.
being an adult in a city.
Yep.
hmm
Um, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Well,
Yeah.
I say you're on the right track. You're doing
Without
Yeah.
doubt.
everything properly. I'm just so, after this, having this conversation, just so happy for you and proud of you. And I'm
Thank
super
you.
excited to watch your career grow because we feel like it's really going to. But it's all about social media. So where can people follow you?
Oh, you can follow me on Instagram,
hmm
at Feaven Abera. Um, you can also follow me on Blue Sky, which I think is also Feaven Abera, but could also be lying.
Could be lying. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's Feaven Abera as well.
All
If
right.
not, I'm just gonna change it to that right now. That's my new Blue Sky
There you
handle.
go.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So that and Blue Sky and IMDb, that kind of
All
thing.
the good places.
All the
Yes.
good places.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a I'm a zillennial. I keep it very simple.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
like Logan said, just you're definitely doing everything right, and you've just been an absolute gem to talk to today. And
Thank
I
you.
think it's going to inspire a lot of people because you
hmm
you are proof positive that if you do things right and you put in the work and you understand that it is a marathon and not a sprint, and you're proof positive that you can be successful and you can do it and go after it. And so thank you so much for talking to us and putting out what you've learned, because I think it is going to help a lot of people trying to break into the industry, which is what we're all about. So we
Yeah,
appreciate you.
thank you. Yeah, always here for it. I'm actually, mentoring other actors. I never really say no to people who reach out to me wanting to talk. And I'm,
Love that.
again, like I'm in my early stages of my career. Like I want to say it is more emerging, but definitely there's been a shift.
Yep.
And I feel like sometimes when you're trying to figure out where your career is or how to start it, and you're looking at other people who've kind of already hit that finish line, and it's like, well, now because you've already been, working for so long, like I can't really follow how you got to this point in this era of your career, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
just being as open and communicative with it as much as possible, I think is just as positive for the community than
Love
to
that.
just wait till you've become successful. You know what I mean?
Yep. Love it.
Yes, most definitely, most
Yeah.
definitely. Well,
Yeah.
listen, thank you again so much. Take care, and we're going
Thank
to be
you.
talking to you soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
All
You
right. You
too.
too.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, what a phenomenal interview and a conversation with somebody. Like I said, we try to shoot for Oscar winners and up and comers at the same time, and this is a true example of that.
Oh, without doubt. And, like you said during the conversation, it's always awesome when we learn something that we didn't know.
Yeah,
And, I think it would be a lot of people probably didn't know that in Canada, there's not a lot of private funding, that it is
right?
all done by the government, which that's awesome, because I wish ours would be more that way. You'd see a lot more success with indie filmmakers if it was
Yeah,
government funded, as opposed to having to try to privately raise the money. That'd be epic. So you
yeah.
learn something new every day. And she was just a gem, man. So much advice and knowledge to give to the up and comers. What a great conversation.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree. Thank you again, Faven, for coming on the show.